Okay, let's get into it. There's a serious clash brewing in Minneapolis. And we're not just talking about protesters on the streets. This is a direct standoff between the city's own mayor and federal law enforcement. We're going to break down how a pretty wild dispute at a hotel has spiraled into a fundamental question of who actually controls the city. To really get a feel for the tension in Minneapolis, you just have to hear the raw anger. This quote from a protester right there on the ground, it just cuts straight to the heart of the conflict. It pretty much sets the stage for everything we're about to unpack.
So, what kicked this all off? Well, it all started with a very, very clear message, and it didn't come from protesters. It came from two local hotels.
So picture this. According to federal officials, you've got over a dozen ICE and Border Patrol agents staying at a couple of major hotels. Then, all of a sudden, they're told they have to be out by noon. Just gone. And the reasons they were given were apparently all over the place, just that they had to leave right now. But this is where the story gets really weird. Federal agents are literally being kicked out onto the street. Yet, according to Commander Gregory Bovino of the Border Patrol, a quick call to one of the hotels showed they were still taking brand new reservations for that exact same night. Right away, that made them wonder what was really going on. So, what are we supposed to make of this? We're left with two completely different stories. The hotels said their staff were getting threats because they were housing the agents, but Commander Bovino said he hadn't heard a thing about any of that. This disagreement right here just shows you the deep level of mistrust that's fueling this whole situation. And this whole hotel dispute, it didn't stay a hotel dispute for long. It blew up into a direct political showdown between Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and federal law enforcement. So here's Mayor Frey's side, in his own words. He's framing these federal operations not as law enforcement, but as straight-up intimidation. He says, look, the city works with the feds on violent crime, sure, but he draws a hard line at what he calls yanking random people off the street. And the response from Commander Bovino? Wow. It could not be more blunt. He completely rejects the mayor's entire characterization of what his agents are doing, setting up this incredibly stark, fundamental disagreement. Let's put their core arguments side by side because this is really the whole conflict in a nutshell. Mayor Frey sees what the feds are doing as a threat to his community. But on the other side, Commander Bovino says his agents are only on the streets in the first place because the city refuses to hand over known criminals from its jails. He argues that this lack of cooperation is what forces them to go out and find these people in the open. You know, when leadership is this divided, the conflict never stays behind closed doors. It always spills out into public view. And from the sounds of it, things are getting pretty confrontational out there. The source material paints a really volatile picture. You've got protesters reportedly throwing bottles and chunks of ice at agent vehicles. There's a group being described as anarchists who are allegedly slashing the tires of any car they even think might belong to ICE, and sometimes they're wrong and they're hitting ordinary citizens' cars. The official response has been arrests and the use of less lethal munitions. Now, about those crowd control tactics, Commander Bovino made a really key point. He stated that a recent federal judge's ruling did not create a blanket ban on things like tear gas or pepper spray. He argues those tools are still necessary to protect his officers, the public, and, even the protesters themselves. And all of this stress, this high-stakes environment, it's also having a major ripple effect. It's reportedly affecting the morale and even the career plans of some of the local Minneapolis police officers. Yeah, this tension isn't just affecting the community, it's apparently creating a real rift within local law enforcement itself. According to Commander Bovino, it's not just Minneapolis cops. Police from several departments in the area are now asking about how they can switch over and get federal jobs. This creates such a fascinating dynamic. Commander Bovino is claiming that while he basically can't talk to senior local leadership, his communication with the regular officers on the street is excellent. He says a lot of them are asking how they can join up with federal agencies, and that he welcomes them with open arms. So when you take all these individual conflicts, the hotels, the press conferences, the clashes on the streets, they all really boil down to one central constitutional question. And make no mistake, this isn't just some local spat. The situation is being watched at the absolute highest levels of government. It's gotten so serious that past discussions about invoking the Insurrection Act have even been mentioned. And that's a federal power that is almost never used, reserved for the most extreme circumstances. So what's the view from the top? Well, Commander Bovino says the president and the Secretary of Homeland Security are very aware of what's going on. He describes the protest groups as being very well organized. But then, in a really striking choice of words, he also calls them a soft bunch compared to protesters they've dealt with in other places, like Chicago or LA. Which leaves us right here, with this huge, unresolved question. We've seen the political chasm and the physical confrontations, and it really forces us to ask, when two levels of government are in direct opposition like this, who has the final say? Ultimately, who controls the streets?